You're listening to The Tales We Tell, a podcast about spooky stories, unsolved mysteries, and local lore. I'm your host, Hannah Parch.
And I'm Katy.
Welcome back.
The cheese kind of got to me on that
I
one.
know, a little bit. That's okay.
Caught in my throat a little bit.
Oh, we're back with snacks and wine and all the comforts of
Just comfort.
just comforts of everything. I'm gonna jump right in and say that we're officially resetting 2023. 2023 can go f itself.
Already?
Yes, and then come back and think about what it did and start over.
What did it do?
Okay, well, as of the time of me writing my announcements. Okay, so, like, the big thing that we posted about on our Instagram was the Damar Hamlin injury, which has been, like, the big thing this week. If you don't know what we're talking about and you don't watch football, Damar Hamlin is the safety for the Buffalo Bills. And in last week's game, he made a tackle and had, like, a freak once-in-a-lifetime thing that happens.
Cardiac arrest.
Yeah, and his heart stopped. And it was very scary. He is doing remarkably well.
I heard his breathing tube was removed the other day.
Yes, he watched the game today. So he's, like, awake.
Mm-hmm. Is he still in intensive care?
Yes, I think so. And I don't know what all goes into recovering from cardiac arrest, but he is doing well, which we're all very thankful for.
The fact that he's in great shape is,
yeah,
you know, a real
Yes.
big beneficial thing. Like, if anyone needs an excuse or reason to to get into shape, that's a good one.
Or an excuse or a reason to learn CPR. I was talking to my boss about this. I mentioned, I would like to, I learned it a very, very long time ago. I was like, I think I could probably get by in a pinch, but I'm not confident enough. And he told me that the college where I work, he's like, they offer classes occasionally, so just keep an eye out. And
We did that through my work twice in my time there. So over the 5.5 years I was there, we did two separate CPR trainings because your training is only valid, I think, for 2 years.
Yeah. Did you do, did you learn, like, baby CPR? Mm-hmm. Is that terrifying to...
Yes.
Golly.
But it was nice when I, now have a baby who started choking on something and I knew exactly what to do.
You told me about that. I remember when I worked at a daycare, the day we had the class for that and learned. And I was like, okay, very important. This is good. And I left and I was like, okay, the day I perform CPR on a baby, I will quit.
Yep.
I just don't want to do this anymore after that. Also, the same week that happened, Jeremy Renner, snowplow tried to kill him.
Mm.
He's doing okay.
I didn't hear about that one.
He got run over by a snowplow.
Jeez.
I know. Also, a race car driver, Ken Block, was killed in an accident. A lot of tragic stuff all happened, like, in the same week. Also, this is going to sound really petty compared to all three of those things. But the insurance company decided to total my car, and I was very sad about that.
So sad.
I know. And then on top of that, I already told Katy that this episode's going to be really dark. So
bring it on, because I already told Hannah that I'm in a mood.
You have a teething...
On that note, I have an announcement.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Walker has 2 more teeth now.
Ooh!
His top teeth finally came in, but...
Jeez.
He spent the past 2 days bitching about it, and today was the worst. I think they, officially came in last night, which is why I'm so freaking exhausted right now, because I didn't get a good night's sleep Friday night. He woke me up a couple of times, not needing anything, just woke me up. So I was already a little bit tired all day Saturday, and then Saturday was just a long day.
Right.
And then today, last night, he woke me up at 2 a.m, screaming up a storm. Inconsolable. I had to go in there and sit with him for a while and get him to calm down, and I was able to get him back to sleep. And he did fine until he woke up this morning, and everything was fine this morning until around 9 when he has his first bottle and then nap. Except he didn't nap. He cried.
Oh.
And he cried and he cried. I'm like, all right, surely he's going to tire himself out any minute now. Any minute now. Any minute now. No. And then, so finally I go and get him.
Right.
And he's still a little fussy, but, you know, like, I would get, like, 20 minutes of him being happy to play.
Mm-hmm.
And then the most minor inconvenience, like, he'd be standing, holding himself up on the chair, and he'd, like, lose his balance and fall down, but land on his butt, not actually hurt himself or anything. And, I mean, he's falling inches.
Yeah.
And then he's crying and inconsolable, and everything is awful in the world, and, you know, mild fever because of teething and also an ear infection. But Tylenol not doing jack diddly.
Yeah.
Because normally that'll help him sleep. That would help with the pain.
Yeah.
No. His next nap time comes around, cries the whole damn time. And, you know, I'd have to, like, you know, put him in the crib for a minute while I go to the bathroom or go fix his bottle. It's like, screams the entire time. Then there's another couple of times where he was acting like he was exhausted. I'm like, yeah, I bet you are tired because you didn't sleep during nap time. So I'm going to put you in the crib so you can try and take a nap. No. Just cried the whole time. And then, so yeah, like I said, he'd be happy for like 20 minutes and then he'd be all over me. And it's mostly fine.
Yeah.
Except he hurts. He's grabbing at my face and my skin. I had, you know, claw marks and scratches all over, like, my throat from where he uses my shirt to pull up, and also he likes playing with my necklace. But he loves my teeth, too. So he's constantly, like, grabbing at my mouth to see my teeth.
If his teeth are gonna hurt, so are yours.
Yeah. But it's my face. And also the inside of my mouth that gets the beating. Like, just gently touching.
What a weirdly specifically vindictive kid that you have.
Well, it's... And the most frustrating thing is it's freaking adorable, too. Because I just kind of, like, lower my lip and, like, jut my chin out like I do a... And he sees my teeth and he'll, like, just kind of grab them and he'll go... And he just thinks... Like, just looking at and, like, sticking his hand in my mouth, and I'll, like, pretend to close my mouth on him and go, rah, 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 like I'm pretending to eat his hand. It's the funniest thing in the world to him.
Aww. He is the cutest child.
He's so cute, but he's such a demon. And I was already so tired already, just, like, not feeling well, like, just not having a great day myself. And, I mean, it was only during one nap today that he finally went down for about 30 minutes. I got about 30 minutes of peace and quiet today.
Jeez.
And I was actually going to let myself nap. I think I maybe got about 5 minutes of me, like, actually close my eyes, a little bit of rest. I don't think I ever dozed off, but...
Well...
To bring on the doom and gloom.
Well, I provided Katie with some homemade mac and cheese.
It's very good and comforting.
Thank you. The recipe I got from my sister-in-law, Chloe, which she got from online, but I'm still calling it Chloe's recipe. It was a little labor-intensive, but I think fully worth it because I've just been eating it.
What else is in here?
Like, literally nothing. It's like cheese and butter.
Okay.
I put some breadcrumbs on top. I burned the sauce a little bit, so you might just be getting burnt
It's
cheese.
not a taste flavor. It's more of a, like, the color and consistency almost looks a little bit like refried beans.
Oh, it's because I burnt the roux.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was supposed to make a roux, and I burnt it, so it was...
That'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it still
Burnt
tastes
flour.
good. Still tastes good to me.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm sure it's not supposed to be brown, but whatever. I think it's good. So we're also drinking my favorite wine, which is Mayomi. I'm saying as a way to celebrate the new year since we're restarting it. Also, the Bills won today, so we'll celebrate that. Naheem Hines had 2 of our touchdowns. He's an NC State grad, so gotta shout him out. And then we also have chocolate-covered pretzels.
I will be munching on those very soon.
Which were a weird gift that I ended up taking home from work. I don't know who they're from. My coworker just said, "Do you want this 3-pound bag of pretzels?" And And so that's like
Yes.
a quarter of them.
Then I won't feel guilty about doing some
No,
damage.
if you eat that entire bowl, you're not going to be doing much damage. So, okay. A couple more announcements. I have a shout out to a new listener. Her name is Madison.
Hey, Madison.
Katie's covering her mouth because she's chewing.
I'm trying to hide food noises.
It's okay. I told Jarek, because he hates when we eat on here. I don't care if Jarek hates that we eat on here. If listeners start complaining, I mean, if we ate every episode and listeners were like, that's disgusting, I would.
And I really try my best not to make food noises.
I don't feel like we eat that often.
It's happened a lot of times lately is the thing.
That's true.
There was the popcorn, the peanuts, and now the pretzels. Pa, pa, pa.
I feel like it started happening when you were pregnant. But that was a good excuse.
And even then, it wasn't that often.
It wasn't that often. We had cake for
our anniversary
special
episode.
occasions. Yeah. I told Jarek there's an episode. I told you I started listening to that podcast, Hey Babe.
Mm-hmm.
There is a whole episode where they do the Hot Ones Challenge, which is that show where they interview celebrities and they eat hot wings. They do a whole segment where they just try the hot sauce, but they're like this close to the mic and they're like,
big time food noises.
and they're just like munching on chips and hot sauce and then complaining about how hot it is. And I was like, okay, if you hate food noises,
do not listen to that episode.
And he's like, you know that they're like actual celebrities. I was like, okay, well, we don't make that many food noises, so get over it. Okay, anyways, back to Madison. So Madison is listening because I was her secret Krampus through a different podcast that we both listened to that organizes a secret Santa. Mm-hmm. And I was the person sending her a gift. And because I shamelessly self-promote, I got her stuff from her list and I like packaged it up, but then I also threw in some stickers and business cards and I wrote her a little note and I don't think I told her about the podcast. I just said like, oh, I'm just shamelessly also promoting my own podcast. Here's some stickers. It got there after Christmas, and so she messaged me. She found us on Instagram and she messaged us to let me know she got it and that she would listen. And so I was like, oh, I'll give you a shout out. And she's also given me book recommendations. So thank you in advance for those.
What kind of books?
Not smutty books.
I've got a really good fantasy series I'm reading right now.
Oh, okay. I told her,
but it's also smutty.
Oh, okay. Well, I almost said
it's good. There's like such a great story. It would be still good without.
I almost said smut, but then I was like, no, Katie's my smut person. I told her like dark thrillers.
I say smut. Really, it's a lot of just like romance.
Yeah.
Just spicy scenes in the romance. A lot of times they're slow burns. So there's only a very little bit.
Yeah.
Smut is a hasty generalization.
This is true. Well, I didn't ask for romance. I asked for dark thrillers.
Got some of those too.
Are they smutty thrillers?
What do you take me for? Of course they are.
My next announcement is a thank you to listeners who have already sent in their irrational fears.
Have I sent you Kara's yet?
No.
Oh, dang.
Okay.
To do that. All right.
Well, then thank you, Kara and Josh, because I just today read Josh's full story on his irrational fear, and it's kind of hilarious. Like, not hilarious like I'm laughing at Josh, but I'll share it with you later. It's terrifying, but in a hilarious way. And my final announcement is an update. I'm so mad I didn't update on this last week. Okay, everyone, I have an update on the mug situation that we received from our lovely listener, Amanda.
So we were right.
We were right. Yes. There are, in fact, 2 mugs. So the first one we received is the one that says, "It's not a murder of crows without probable cause." And then shortly after that, a second one arrived that says,
"There's 3 branches. On the first branch, there's 1 crow, and it says, conspiracy to murder. On the second branch, with 2 crows, says, attempted murder. And on the third branch with 3 crows, it just says, murder.
Yes.
So we're each drinking out of one.
Yes. I have the...
I think each week we should switch back and forth.
It's probably a good idea.
We get shared custody.
That's true. We can still share custody. Although I have been... I've been using this one, the It's Not a Murder of Crows Without Probable Cause. I've been using it as my walking the dog wine cup. Well, because if you walk around and you're carrying a glass of wine, you look a little...
lush.
Yeah, but if you're walking around and you're just carrying, like, a coffee mug or, like... an opaque container with liquid in it, I feel like you look less suspicious, and maybe I'm trying to be friends with some of my neighbors, so.
But you still need the wine in order to make friends.
Well, I feel like they'll think I'm cool if they're like, oh, what are you drinking? I'm like, it's wine. But they gotta ask first, so we'll see. All right. Are you ready for some content warnings?
Bring them.
All right. Well, Dante, if you've been listening so far,
you're out, bud.
Sorry, man. Go find something else to do. Pretty much every content warning you can think of. Sexual assault, suicide, mental illness, cannibalism, torture, just graphic overall stuff. No child murder, though.
Woohoo!
Technically, everyone in this is an adult.
Well, when it gets to the tough parts, and if you need a little happy break, I've got a picture to show you.
Oh, great. I almost texted you to come up with some...
happy facts?
Yeah. But I was finishing this very late last night. And I finished it and just went to bed. And I told Jarek, I was like, I need some palate cleansers. Just show me some videos of happy stuff. So, and you do have a dossier.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Waiting for me.
So, you can probably just flip through it as we go. It's okay. All right. So today I'm going to tell you about Gary Heidnik. Or Heidnik. I'm not really sure how you say his name.
All right.
And at the end of this, I'm going to let you guess who he partially inspired, what movie killer he inspired.
All right.
All right. So Gary Heidnik was born November 22nd, 1943 in Eastlake, Ohio. He was the oldest of 2. His younger brother was named Terry. And their parents divorced in 1946, so right after Gary was born. And after the divorce, the boys lived with their mother for 4 years, and then they went to live with their dad and his new wife. And I'm not sure why they switched. Later, we find out that his mom, like later in life, his mother is suffering from alcoholism, so I don't know if she was struggling with that then, if that had anything to do with it, or if it was like his dad lived in a better school district or something.
Okay. Who knows?
But Gary's father was a strict disciplinarian, and according to Gary, he was also emotionally abusive. Gary suffered from bedwetting, which...
tick number 1.
I know. I hate that that's one of them, though, because that's such a, like... I don't know. That's not like a kid's fault, you know?
I mean, what is it? Indicative of trauma and other, like, issues?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if the kid already is suffering from some other issues...
Yeah. I feel like they should...
And he has these other 2...
Yeah.
things, or at least one of the other ones, then, you know, it shows that he's...
They should
mentally unstable.
They should change it to, like... If a kid is, like, obsessed with fire and torturing animals and has also suffered abuse, instead of, like, is a bedwetter.
I don't know.
And,
I wish I did
tortures
know the
animals.
Reason behind that. I wonder if it was just, like, when people were creating these profiles and, like, came up with this trifecta of serial killers, they just happened to notice, like, wow, a lot of these were bedwetters as kids.
I don't know.
They just went with it. They were like, we got to have more than just 2.
Yeah. They're like, 2 does not a pattern make.
We need a trifecta.
Yeah.
What is something else that all of these people have in common? Oh, they wet the bed when they were kids? Cool. Done.
Whatever.
Hannah, are you being defensive about bedwetters because you were a bedwetter?
No. I don't think I was a bedwetter.
I mean, past the acceptable years and ages.
I don't really remember, honestly. I don't remember having any...
I feel like if you don't remember wetting the bed, you're not a bedwetter.
I remember having to wear... I feel like I had to wear pull-ups longer than, like, normal.
I feel like girls are hard... I've heard that girls are harder to potty train.
But I don't remember ever having any, like, sleepover anxiety or anything about wetting the bed. So, I don't know. Mom, you can tell me. I don't know.
The only time I can ever remember having an accident in the bed, I was, like, really ill with food poisoning.
Yeah. That's...
So.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give myself a pass on that.
Yeah. Or, like, if you have a dream where you're... No, okay.
No, never had an issue wetting the bed, other than being, like, like, deathly ill.
Yeah. Oh, I also should say, before we get too far into this, I will give a shout out and a thank you to my mother-in-law, Stephanie, because for Christmas, she gave me, and I wish I had it in here, it's a book called, it's like the ultimate serial killer trivia book. It looked really gnarly, but I was just like flipping through it, and came across some like facts about Gary Heidnik, which is how I picked him as my topic. So thank you, Stephanie. I've also picked some other future topics from that book.
Nice.
So, giving me ideas. Okay, so Gary suffered from bedwetting, and his father would hang the soiled sheets from his bedroom window as a way to humiliate him. So Gary's dad's kind of a dick. And then Gary and Terry, hilarious, also did not get along with their stepmom, so life at home wasn't the best. But at school, Gary did pretty well academically, but was antisocial and was apparently bullied for his, quote, oddly shaped head. Although as an adult, you can't tell that he had a weird shaped head. And Terry would later claim that his odd shaped head was from falling out of a tree when he was a kid, but I don't think that's how head shapes work. That's okay. I was just checking with someone else.
It's genetics, but also laying in the crib. That's why they came up with these like wedge pillow things for the crib to keep babies from getting flat head.
Okay.
But they've also been like, no, don't use those, because anything in the crib before 12 months is dangerous. But like if you're 5 and you hit your head on something, it's not going to alter the shape of your head, right? Pretty sure all of your soft spots and everything are...
Yeah, your head, your bones are okay.
I mean, they're still growing and shaping and changing some, but... Because obviously your head now is bigger than what it was at 5.
Well, yeah, but it's okay. Sometimes I put things on...
It's not likely he dented it.
Yeah, okay.
Or enough to create a weird shape.
Sometimes I put things in my notes that are just like, check with Katy on that one. So Terry also believed that this fall caused some of Gary's later mental and behavioral problems. But Terry also himself suffered from mental illnesses as an adult and spent time in and out of mental institutions.
I'm going to go with genetics on
this one.
Yeah,
so it
not trees.
Very likely could have just been genetic. In 8th grade, Gary decided he wanted to become an Army officer. And so his dad, who probably was happy to get him out of the house, sent him to the Staunton Military Academy in Virginia. And when he was there, Gary made excellent grades, but he left after only 2 years. And he would later admit that he had visited a psychologist while at Staunton, which had prompted his decision to leave, but he didn't disclose what the psychologist had diagnosed him with or why he thought he needed to see a psychologist in the first place.
I wonder if that's just kind of part of being there. Like, you have, like, maybe 1 or 2 kind of preliminary or, like, 1 meeting a year with a psychologist. And if you feel you need it or if the psychologist feels you need it, you probably have routine things.
I kind of get the feeling that the psychologist maybe, like, detected what is later diagnosed in him, which I actually don't have an official diagnosis, but like if he detected some kind of mental illness that would have gotten him sent home anyways and said something, maybe Gary was like, well, I don't want to get sent home, I'll just leave on my own. Like, I don't want to, I don't know.
Yeah. Which is interesting. I know somebody who was in the Army for several years, and he had some sort of mental issues. I have no idea what it was, but actually being in the Army with that, like, the rigid structure and everything was really, really good for him.
Oh.
And it was when he got out of the Army that everyone was like,
Yeah.
Like, he didn't do anything, like, he's obviously, like, he's not a criminal, he didn't do anything horrible, it's just, he's a little off.
Yeah.
Like, he's nice, but he's just off. There's something about him that's just like, it's like he's not quite right, but he did really, really well in that military setting. And I feel like, you know, some people with mental illness, like, absolutely should not be in the armed forces.
Right.
But then there's others who might actually benefit from it.
Right. Well, so after Gary left, he went back to Ohio, tried to finish out his high school education at 2 different high schools, but he ended up dropping out without graduating and just joined the regular Army when he turned 18. And in the Army, Gary did really well. He just didn't make friends. He was eventually sent to San Antonio, Texas to train as a medic. And then he was transferred to a field hospital in West Germany where he got his GED. And then in August of 1962, he got sick. He complained of dizziness, blurred vision, and nausea. And he was diagnosed with gastroenteritis. Although they didn't officially diagnose a mental illness, they prescribed him trifluorap. Damn it. Okay. Trifluoperazine. It's an antipsychotic used to treat schizophrenia. I knew I should have texted your husband. Not that he could help me with pronunciation, but whatever.
At least not via text.
You know, he was prescribed an antipsychotic despite not officially being diagnosed with a mental illness. They're like, oh, you're having stomach problems. Here's this pill that'll help with that.
So, was it actually gastroenteritis or was it a prion disease?
Wait, what? What's a prion disease?
A disease that you get from eating raw or undercooked, usually human flesh.
Oh, no, it wasn't that.
Dang it. I was ready to take a sip.
Sorry. You're not quite. Good guess, though. I'm just giving you a lot of background information. Unfortunately, this is all just background information for him.
Well, I didn't know if it was one of those, like, these things happened, but now we know that really these other things were actually happening at that time.
No. Good guess, though.
That
was good.
Right.
That would have been a great setup on my part, though. But no. I
was just trying to... my job here is to make you look good.
I appreciate that. So he gets sent back to the United States shortly after this diagnosis of tummy problems. And shortly after that, he is honorably discharged on medical grounds, and his official diagnosis at that point was schizoid personality disorder, which is not the same as schizophrenia. It's just not.
Okay.
So he settled in Philadelphia after his discharge from the Army and became a licensed practical nurse. He got a job at the University of Pennsylvania Hospital, but he was not good at that job, so he got fired. And then he enrolled at the Veterans Administration Hospital, trained as a psychiatric nurse, but he was also not good at that job.
Well, it's like the blind leading the blind there.
He was asked to leave because of poor attendance and rude behavior towards patients. He does not have people skills, remember?
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking about. Like, he did well in school academically,
Right.
but not socially. And
Right.
so I'm like, yeah, no, don't.
Yeah.
Maybe they should go send him to work in a morgue. He'd probably be better with those people.
Yeah, honestly, that's probably the safest place for him to be.
I mean, you know, like, he could do the medical
Yeah.
exams.
There you go.
He could have all the book smarts without having to have the social skills.
Yeah. Perfect. So at this point, Gary's mental health really begins to deteriorate. He would end up in and out of a bunch of different medical institutions, and over the course of the next 15 years, he was
As a patient or an employee.
as a patient. And over the course of the next 15 years, he would attempt suicide at least 13 times. I know. In 1970, his mother, who at this point had been suffering from bone cancer and alcoholism, died by suicide, and specifically by drinking mercuric chloride, which I think is some component of mercury. It's not it's poisonous. You're not supposed to drink it. And so this only worsened Gary's mental state. So he's obviously the mental health stuff is genetic, not from the tree incident, as Terry perhaps suggested.
If it was, that's one hell of a tree, though. It was a tree. It was a family tree.
Oh my gosh, that was so good of us. Oh man, our brains were just so on sync at that time. Magic happens in this room.
Also, 5 points to all of our listeners who got it well before we did.
I know. They got it back the first time we said the tree. So Gary is developing some strange habits. He is wearing a leather jacket all the time that he refuses to take off. He is saluting people. He would roll up one pant leg when he wanted to be left alone. He would go long periods of time without talking. And then his personal hygiene became like non-existent. And then sometimes he would act out violently. On one occasion, he attacked his brother Terry with a wooden board. I don't know why, just he got upset.
We don't always need a reason.
And then when he was visiting Terry in the hospital afterwards, he told him that if he had died from his injuries, he would have dissolved his body in a bath of acid.
Deficient.
So, just lots of little red flags, little warning signs.
Well, he hospitalized his brother with a wood board.
Yeah. Just, if I had little red flags that I could just be like throwing out for each of these incidents. If you want, you can look at your first picture. It's just a picture of Gary to get an idea of what he looks like.
Other than crazy eyes, he's not unattractive.
He's not a bad looking guy.
No, like, and it's not crazy eyes, it's crazy eye. It's that one.
Oh yeah, that one's kind of looking off
That one.
past you.
But like that
one's kind of normal.
I mean, he looks a little handsome there.
Yeah. But you have to remember, he probably doesn't smell very good.
Well,
He's not showering.
it's just a picture,
I
it's not
know.
smell-o-vision.
Well,
here.
scratch and sniff. That one was scratch and sniff. You can smell.
All right,
and then,
well, I'll
okay.
try it then.
I gotta get Jarek in here for it. Okay. I'm kidding, Jarek. I'm sure you smell fine today.
I don't.
I don't know.
I smell like child. Smells inky.
Good.
Yeah.
That's what it's supposed to smell like.
All right.
Okay.
So that's Gary.
That's Gary. Scary Gary.
No, there's only one scary Gary, and his name is Busey.
Oh, yeah. He is. Also has the crazy eyes.
Mm-hmm. Both of them.
Both of them, yeah. In 1971, Gary had a revelation that he should start a church. And so he did. It was called the United Church of the Ministers of God. And he made himself bishop, obviously. And at the time of its founding, it only had 5 members, including Terry and his girlfriend at the time. And in 1975, Gary opened a Merrill Lynch account in the church's name and invested $1,500. So Gary, we already established, was like very good in school, just antisocial. He's also very intelligent. So his IQ was between like 130 and 145, which is above average. It's like close to genius, I think. And he had been interested in finances and making money from a really young age. So he was able to turn his initial investment of $1,500 into $545,000 relatively quickly.
And how much in today's money is $1,500 from?
Shockingly, I did not do that math.
What? But you
I
always
know.
do that math.
I know.
You always tell us about today's money.
I know.
Because I mean, $1,500. We'll look at right now and be like, that's not a large initial investment, really. I mean, like in the grand scheme of things, for some people, obviously, it's very large. But in 1970, I feel like that was a rather large investment.
I'm gonna look it up right now. I'm sorry, I let everyone down. All right, the initial investment
in today's money
would have been around $11,000.
Yeah. No, that's why I'm like, I didn't think it was that much.
Yeah,
but
he turned
$1,500 to $11,000.
He turned it into approximately $4 million. So
nice.
He turned into like
within a very short time frame.
Within a shortish time period. Yeah.
Are we talking just like a few years, or
I think like
5 to 10 years?
I would say 5 to 10 years probably. Okay. And I think the idea is just that he's like a very savvy investor, and so it just continued.
Oh yeah, anytime he would earn money, he would reinvest it.
Yeah. So he is now like independently wealthy. When he was discharged from the Army, they gave him full disability. So he's getting disability from the Army. He's independently wealthy, so like he doesn't have to work, and he's mentally unstable. So
but not when it comes to investing in finances.
But not when it comes to so, and that comes up at the very end of this. So that's why I mention it. Gary's also racking up a very impressive criminal record at this time too. So in 1976, he so one of the things he did with all of his money was he bought some properties, or at least one property, and rented it to someone. I don't know. I assume he bought multiple properties. This is the only one I know of.
All right.
And he had an altercation with one of his tenants, and so he just shot a gun at this person's face.
Didn't hit him?
Didn't hit him, but grazed him. His face. So, like, very much intended to, like, probably kill this person. And he was charged with aggravated assault and carrying an unlicensed pistol. Fun fact, that house was later sold. And the new owners, these poor people, found boxes of pornographic magazines, and in the basement they found a hole that had just been dug in the concrete floor. Just casual.
That's one of those, like, do we say something about this, or do we just cover it up? And
well, because you're like, these two things on their own And then, like, you add in the criminal charge, and then, like, you find out later all the stuff he's done, and you're like...
Well, it's kind of like that game of, like, what 3 things, individually are fine, but you check out at Walmart together with them, and it paints a picture.
Yeah. In 1978, Gary was dating a woman named Anjanette Davis, and Anjanette was a Black woman with a developmental disability. That was kind of like a preference of Gary's. He preferred dating Black women with mental disabilities. I don't know why.
So if it was a developmental, I guess she was mentally deficient then?
Yeah, I'm not sure. So the article that I got a lot of this information was using really outdated terminology.
Yeah.
So I do not know the extent or the nature because they were using words that I do not care to repeat to describe these people.
Got it.
But he dated a number of women that were exclusively Black, and he told someone that he preferred dating women who had like mental deficiencies.
I wonder if it was just because with his, let's call them personality issues,
they were like easier to relate to,
maybe, or kind of control, or it was easier for these people to look past his own social ineptitude.
When we talked about like Eddie Gein, how he was friends with children, and because he didn't know how to socialize with adults, and I don't want to humanize Gary at all because I think Gary's a monster, and I think Eddie Gein, we all know how I feel about Eddie Gein. I don't think he's a monster. Sorry if you're new here, you can go back and listen to that episode. I don't know. I also think knowing what I'm about to tell you, I do think it probably also has a lot to do with him wanting to control them, probably.
Yep. Control and take advantage of.
So Anjanette had a sister named Alberta who also had developmental disabilities and was living at the Penn Township Mental Institution. And one day in 1978, Gary checked Alberta out of the institution on a day pass and then locked her in a storage unit in his basement for several days. Just
'cause?
Casual kidnapping and imprisonment.
And this mental facility, were they upset about this?
Yes, okay. They called the police. Like, there was a search for her.
Good.
So, yeah. So when she was recovered and taken to the hospital, doctors discovered that she had been raped and sodomized and had contracted gonorrhea both vaginally and orally.
Delightful.
Yeah. And so Gary was arrested and charged with long list. Which is good, because this is like one of the few situations
hit him
where,
with the whole book.
He's charged with kidnapping, rape, unlawful restraint, false imprisonment, involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, and interfering with the custody of a committed person. He was sentenced to 3 to 7 years, but for some reason that sentence was overturned on appeal, and he ended up serving 3 years in a mental institution and was released on April 12th of 1983.
Rude.
I know. So, again, just imagine my little red flags over here that I'm just, tossing out left and right. Because there's, a paper trail of this guy just, A, being violent, and B, being violent. Okay.
Predatory.
Yeah. On October 3rd of 1985, Gary married Betty Disto, who was a Filipino woman he met through a matrimonial service. If you know what I mean.
Yep.
And predictably, the marriage didn't work out. It immediately became abusive for Betty, both physically and sexually. Gary had several sex partners during their time together, and he often forced Betty to participate with them. And eventually Betty found support in the local Filipino community, and she was able to leave Gary in January 1986. Sorry, I wrote that date weird. I wrote in January on 1986. January 1986, just 3 months after she had, come over to the United States and married him. And she reported him to the police, which, hallelujah. And Gary was charged with assault, indecent assault, spousal rape, and involuntary deviant sexual intercourse. Love to see a spousal rape being charged.
Hell to the yeah. I was gonna flag that as well.
Don't love to see it, but you know.
I love that it's recognized because I feel like so often it is ignored or basically denied. You can't rape your wife.
Yeah.
You're right, you can't. You're not allowed.
You're not allowed to.
It's against the law. Don't do it.
Don't do it. And then, unfortunately, Betty didn't show up for the preliminary hearing, and so the charges were dismissed.
Did she not show up because she was being locked in a basement for 3 days?
No. She was probably scared. But I think Betty is, doing fine now. I think she found her peace in the Filipino community.
Good. Found a community and a safe haven.
Yeah. That was our background.
As I just say, I can tell by your reaction we are diving in.
Can I have a little chocolate-covered pretzel before we start?
There's a twofer right over there.
Let me grab this.
Oh, it's a threefer.
Oh, it's a threefer.
Hell to the yeah.
Okay. So, November 26th, 1986. So it's the same... No, it's not. Yes, it is. It's the same year that Betty leaves Gary.
Okay.
Josefina Rivera is a 25-year-old sex worker in Philadelphia. She was out working late in the evening, and she'd been working for several hours. It was cold and raining, and all of a sudden, a white Cadillac Coupe de Ville slowed down for her, and the driver asked about her services. So she gets in, and the driver introduces himself as Gary. She notices that he is wearing an expensive watch and driving an expensive car,
but wearing a leather jacket and smells rank.
But that his clothes appear to be cheap and dirty. And when they got to his house, which was in a bad neighborhood, she noticed a Rolls Royce parked in the driveway. I think you can look at your second picture. I think that's the house.
Okay.
I didn't actually highlight where my pictures were. I printed these kind of last minute.
Yeah. Oh, wow. It looks trashy.
Yeah.
Bars on the window and everything.
Yeah. Not a good place. So inside the house, classy decorations. So the kitchen is decorated with pennies glued to the wall. And the upstairs hallway is decorated with $1 and $5 bills glued to the wall. Although that's expensive.
Yep. That is expensive wallpaper. That's way more than most wallpapers.
Yeah. So after they have sex and he pays for her services, Josefina's getting dressed and Gary suddenly begins choking her from behind. He handcuffs her arms behind her and begins leading her down into the basement. The basement is a concrete room with one small boarded up window, a chest freezer, a washer dryer, a pool table, and a dirty mattress on the floor. And in the center of the room, the concrete had been removed and a small hole was being dug out of the ground. So Gary pushes Josefina onto the mattress and attaches metal shackles to her ankles and then chains them to a large pipe that is attached to the ceiling. And then he lays down on the mattress and puts his head in her lap and goes to sleep. And, stays like that through the night. So Josefina, falls asleep at some point. The next morning, when she wakes up, Gary's gone. But then he comes into the basement. He brings her food, but she refuses to eat it because she's like,
I don't trust you.
That might be poisoned. Then he begins to work on the giant hole in the floor. And he begins telling her his plan like a comic book villain would. So he says that he's always wanted a big family, and he'd already fathered 4 children. So he had had 1 child with Aunt Jeanette. He had had 1 child with Betty, which he like didn't even know about until Betty had like sued him for child support. And they had 2 with 2 other.
Okay, so these people did exist. These children do.
Yes,
right.
he did have 4 legitimate children.
I mean, he's going comic book villain here, digging a hole in a concrete floor, telling his plan. You never know what's real or not.
This is true. He tells Josephina that he had lost touch with these children for some reason, some strange reason.
Or their mothers realized he was fucking crazy.
Yeah. Or their mothers were these girlfriends he had who were not mentally capable of raising children. Because I do think that a couple of them were immediately put into foster care when they were born. Anyways, so he tells Josephina that he wants this big family. And so his plan is that he is going to get 10 women and form like a harem.
Delightful.
And he is going to impregnate them all and have this huge family that he wants. After he finishes his digging, he rapes Josephina and then leaves for the night. And so once she's alone, Josephina's like, I'm
time to GTFO.
Gonna get the fuck out of here. So she's able to like loosen her shackles enough that she can like get to the window. She pries one of the boards off of the window. The chain is long enough that she can get half of her body out of this window, which she does, and she begins screaming her head off for help. And unfortunately, this neighborhood is like such an awful place that people just like are used to hearing
screaming bloody murder,
screaming for their lives, I guess. And so no one helps her. But Gary hears her from upstairs.
See, that's the risk you take with making noise.
It's so bad. So he comes downstairs and pulls her back inside, beats her, and then he throws her into the hole. The way that I think the hole was not deep enough yet. I think she was sitting in it because he then put plywood on top of it, and it said he had to like push her head down so that it was against her chest. He pushes her head down, puts plywood on top of this hole, and then puts weights on top of the plywood so she can't get out. And then he turns the radio on so that no one can hear her screaming. And then he leaves her for 27 hours. When he comes back, it's now December 3rd, and he lets Josephina out of this hole, and he has another woman with him. He has Sandra Lindsay, who's 24. And
another sex worker?
I don't think so.
Okay.
So Sandra is chained to the ceiling pipe the same way that Josephina had been. And he just leaves them alone for a bit to chat. And
so Josephina can fill him in on the harem plan.
Yeah.
Got it.
And so Josephina kind of quickly realizes that Sandra has developmental disabilities. Sandra tells her that she is a longtime friend of Gary's, that they have been friends for a long time. She had actually like been a sexual partner of Gary's on several occasions, and that eventually she had become pregnant by him, but she had gotten an abortion because she was like, I don't want to have his kid.
I can't raise a kid.
Yeah. But when Gary learned that she had an abortion, he got fucking mad. And he offered her $1,000 to have his baby. And she was like, no, I don't want that. And so he kidnapped her and brought her to his basement dungeon.
Awesome.
Yeah. The next day, Gary came down into the basement and said, oh, Sandra, your sister and cousins came by the house to look for you, but they left because they thought no one was home. And then later he made Sandra write a letter to her mother saying that she had gone away and would call later. And he said that he was going to post the letter from New York to make it look like Sandra had run away. Meanwhile, Sandra's mother had immediately filed a missing persons report for her daughter and had told police that she suspected that she had been taken and held against her will by a man named Gary who lived at 3520 North Marshall Street in Philadelphia. She literally had an address.
Yeah.
She gave the officers his phone number and the name of his friend, Tony Brown.
She could have hired a skywriter.
Yeah. The only thing she didn't have was his last name. She's like, I just don't know his last name. And so the police were like, okay, we'll do the literal fucking bare minimum for you. So they called the number, and they didn't get an answer.
Like, well, I guess there's no Gary.
Yeah. And so they went to the house, and no one answered the door. And they're like, oh, well. They talked to Tony, the friend, and they were like, do you know where Sandra is? And he's like, no. And they were like, okay. They said, do you know what Gary's last name is? And Tony said, yeah, but he spelled it wrong or like pronounced it wrong. So he said Gary's last name was Heidnik or Heidnik, Heidake. I don't know. He gave him something close, but not the same thing. And then when Sandra's mom received the letter from Sandra, police were like, oh, see, she just ran away.
Oh, gosh.
So, yeah. So remember back when we were like, oh, yeah, the police are like charging like they're supposed to.
No,
Hooray.
the police don't charge.
I know.
DAs do that.
So Gary is regularly raping Sandra and Josefina and beating them if they tried to call for help. He also would punish them by putting them in the hole. There's a picture of the hole if you want to see it. There's also a picture.
I love looking at pictures of holes.
I know, right? So the next picture you'll see is, spoiler alert, there's
the harem.
The harem. Spoiler, there's more women that are coming. So Josefina's the very first one on there, and then Sandra is the third one. And I think the next picture is the hole. Yeah. Just lovely hole in the ground.
It looks like it got deeper eventually.
Yeah, because he would come work on it. Probably while telling them more of his plans. Another way that he would punish them is by hanging them by one arm from an overhead beam and leaving them for several hours at a time. Like, feet off the ground, just hanging by an arm. He would feed them sporadically, and he left them barely clothed. I think, for the most part, they were just wearing, like, a shirt. And it is December in Philadelphia, and it's a basement. So it's probably very cold. On December 23rd, Gary went out driving, looking for his next victim. And he saw Lisa Thomas, who is 19, walking to her friend's house and offered her a ride in his swanky Cadillac. He actually first propositioned her, and she was like, I'm not a fucking prostitute. And he was like, oh, sorry. And then he said, do you want to ride? So she accepted his ride, and he drove her to her friend's house, where she said she needed to pick something up. And then afterwards, because he waited, he took her out to a restaurant. While they were eating, he suggested that they go to Atlantic City. She was like, haha, I don't have anything to wear. He's like, oh, it's fine. I'll take you to Sears and I'll get you some clothes. And she was like, okay. And so he takes her to Sears and like buys her clothes.
See, this is something that's okay in my stupid little romance novels, not in real life.
It's so weird.
There is almost nothing that happens in the books that I read that I would be okay with in real life.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so after Sears, they go back to Gary's house, and he puts on a movie and gets some wine for Lisa. And I saw two different accounts. Either Lisa was already taking, like, allergy medication, and that combined with the wine made her, like,
a little tired and
drowsy.
Mm-hmm.
Or Gary just drugged the wine.
I don't know. Maybe she's not taking allergy. Well, I don't know. I'm thinking December allergy medicine, but I take it on the daily every day, year round.
You're drinking wine.
And I'm very tired.
And you're feeling drowsy. So is it that?
Am I going to be strung up in your other room?
Did I poison your wine?
You probably drugged the mac and cheese.
Yeah, the mac and cheese that I was very quick to tell you that I ate mine before you came over.
You can drug just mine, not all of the mac and cheese. It wasn't a burned roux. It was the drugs.
Yeah, you're like, something in here looks a little suspicious. Okay, so whatever. She falls asleep, and when she wakes up, she finds that Gary has undressed her and is taking her upstairs where he essentially rapes her. And then afterwards, he does exactly what he did to Josefina, which is that he began choking Lisa, then handcuffed her, and took her to the basement.
Did he then fall asleep on her lap?
No. He introduced her because he's starting a harem.
Yep. You want your girls to get along.
Yes. And he tells the other women that they need to indoctrinate Lisa by having them force her to perform oral sex on him. I don't know how that worked, but then he gave them sandwiches and left. So.
Okay.
Yeah. On January 2nd, Gary returned to the basement with Deborah Dudley, who was 23. Deborah, I don't know how he found her.
Okay.
But she was a firecracker. She was much more stubborn than the other three, and she fought like everything Gary told her. And unfortunately, her refusal to submit resulted in beatings for everyone. And so that led to a lot of tension amongst everyone.
What was her name again? I'm sorry.
Deborah.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to keep them
That's
all
okay.
straight.
I know it wasn't in order, but that was because I don't have Microsoft Word on my computer here. I just had to go with like the pictures that the internet gave me. So eventually Gary would do like what teachers would do when they would leave the room and put one student in charge and say, write the names of the students that act up on the board.
Yep.
So Gary starts doing that. He's like, I'm going to put someone in charge, and I want you to tell me when I come back who has misbehaved. And then whoever misbehaved, the person who was in charge was supposed to punish them by like being the one to administer like the beating or whatever.
Gotcha. Or by forcing them to give him a blowjob.
Yeah, whatever. And if no one had, quote, misbehaved, Gary wasn't happy with that.
Yep.
Someone had to misbehave, so Gary would sometimes just beat everyone.
Okay.
And it was during this time that Josefina began to kind of play the game.
Mm-hmm.
So she would kind of feign a degree of loyalty and make Gary believe that she kind of enjoyed playing the part of like the wife.
Mm-hmm. Like, I could get down with this harem thing.
Yeah. And it worked. Like, it starts to work. So eventually Gary graciously gives them a toilet and baby wipes to wash. And he changed their food, which had been sporadic and unpredictable, to canned dog food.
Oh, man.
Yeah. On January 18th...
But steady, at least.
Yeah, I know. I think I read somewhere that he would, like, sometimes let them watch TV. And one of the girls said something about, like, a dog food commercial. They said, like, oh, I'm so hungry, I could even eat that dog food or something. Or even that dog food looks good or something. And he was like,
okay.
yeah, essentially. Like,
Eesh.
yeah. On January 18th, Gary abducted Jacqueline Askins, who is 18, and she was a sex worker from the north side of the city. She was so petite that the shackles that he had been using for the other women were too big for her ankles, and he had to use handcuffs. That same day, he surprised the 5 women by bringing them Chinese food and a bottle of champagne because it was Josephina's 26th birthday.
Was it really?
I think it was.
Okay.
But he also apparently thought that Josephina and Sandra were both pregnant. Which, Gary, pregnant women can't have champagne, but whatever. So he was like in an especially good mood. He's like, oh, I'm going to reward y'all with Chinese food and champagne, which, whatever. Champagne does not go with Chinese food, in my opinion, but whatever.
I'm with you on that.
Also, for the record, Josephina and Sandra were not pregnant. He just thought they were for some reason.
He just wanted it, trying to manifest.
Yeah, like, he's not giving them pregnancy tests, so I don't know why he thinks that he knows that they are. He's just, okay.
Hell, maybe he was tracking their cycles, too, somehow.
I would not be surprised if their cycles had stopped due to, like,
the
starvation.
Stress and starvation.
Ugh. Okay. In early February, Sandra was punished for trying to move the plywood that covered the hole. And for some reason, even though he thought that she was pregnant with his child, which was like his goal,
he beat her, right?
Well, Gary decided that her punishment should be extra harsh. So he hung her from a ceiling beam by one arm for several days.
Oof.
She became extremely weak and stopped eating, although Gary tried to force feed her. And after nearly a week, Sandra began running a fever and vomiting. And when she lost consciousness, Gary finally took her down, but told the other women that she was faking it and put her in the hole. And when he returned later that day, he pulled Sandra out of the hole to find that she was dead.
Faked it real good.
Yeah. He took her body upstairs, and later the women heard the sounds of power saws, or a power saw. So Gary was dismembering Sandra's body. He ground the meat up with a meat grinder and fed some of it to his dogs. Second story we've done recently with sweet baby.
Palate cleanser for you.
Thank you.
I could tell you were starting to struggle.
I know. I was gonna say it's the second story we've done recently where someone thought they could that dogs just eat human remains. Yeah, which not true.
They have discerning tastes.
They do. I mean, not well. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I can't decide if I think Kelly would eat me or not. Oh my goodness. Is he crying or laughing?
Laughing.
Oh, okay.
He's having a ball. He was going...
Oh, God, he's so cute. Katy's showing me cute pictures of her baby right now because this is a...
Palate cleanser.
Yeah. This is a rough part here. Some of it he mixed in with the canned dog food that he was feeding the women.
Yep. Figure that was coming.
Yep. The house itself began to smell because
dead people smell.
And neighbors, although they would not call the police for a screaming woman hanging out of a basement window.
Call for a smell, though.
Called the police over the smell. And Gary was like, I just overcooked a roast.
Isn't that
which I
similar
put,
to...
That's not what a roast smells like. It's not.
No.
That's not what, like, cooked meat smells like. It's not. And yeah, that's what Isn't that what Dahmer said?
Yeah, something along those lines.
Something like
some meat went bad or
meat
something.
went bad or something. Yeah. So Gary began to become more and more paranoid that the women were plotting against him, which, to be fair, they were.
Yeah.
And when he realized that they could hear him coming and going, he hung them from the rafters, blindfolded them, and gouged the inside of their ears with a screwdriver.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So he was trying to puncture their eardrums. He wasn't super successful. They did suffer some hearing loss, but not... Complete. I mean, yeah. Obviously, it was permanent, but it wasn't complete. However, Josephina was excluded from this punishment because she was his favorite. And because she was kind of telling him, like, what the others were up to. But not, like, in a...
She wasn't being super tattletale-y. Like, she was still trying to not, like, screw them over, but...
Yeah, like, she was
currying favor without throwing them under the bus as best she could.
They were trying to come up with a plan. Obviously, she was like, I have some power here that I need to, like, leverage. Your plan's not going to work. I need you to trust me that, like, I've got to do some stuff. Obviously, I don't think she thought that, like, a screwdriver was going to come into it.
Yeah.
At one point, when Deborah was, quote, acting out again, he took her upstairs, and when she returned, she was really quiet and not acting out anymore. And eventually she told the other women what Gary had shown her. In a pot on the stove was Sandra's head. And the oven was part of her rib cage that he was roasting. And various parts of her body, including an arm, were wrapped in plastic and stored in the fridge. And he basically said, if you don't start behaving, you will be next. The head in the pot just really was not...
Yeah, that's
too much.
I just read a book about, some Greek characters, and, Greeks love their lamb, and apparently they said, like, there's not a Greek kid out there that didn't walk into the kitchen smelling something amazing, and they opened up the pot lid to see a sheep's head there.
Oh, gosh, that's awful. So bad. That would traumatize me. Bedwetting. Good grief. I should do a study on how many Greek children wet the bed. Man.
But I bet it was delicious.
I mean, yeah, probably. Ugh. All right, so Deborah is shown all of this. But after a few days, Deborah is, like, back to being Deborah.
Yeah.
Rebellious. And so Gary decided to implement a new punishment, which was electric shock.
Fun.
Yeah. So the way he did this is he took an extension cord and he stripped one end of it. And then he'd plug the other end in. And then he would touch the stripped end to, like, the shackles or whatever. Ugh. And again, Josephina was excluded. And Gary actually began to not only give Josephina special treatment, but to get her to help him administer the punishments. I know. And on March 18th, Gary decided to add a new element to the shock treatment. Water. Yeah. So he drilled some holes in the plywood that covered the hole, and then he had Josephina fill the hole with water. And then he forced all the girls into the hole, and he covered it up. And then he touched the wire to one of the chains. I don't know how he didn't think that this, like, wasn't going to kill everyone.
He's going to fry them real fast.
Yeah. So he did it once, and it, like, shocked all of them, but, like, didn't, I guess, kill them. Which, like, I guess, like, taking a real gamble here. What, Gary? And then the second time the wire touched, I guess, just Deborah's chain directly. Mm-hmm. And so she took most of the shock, and it killed her. After that, Gary let them out of the hole and made lunch. And when they were done, he made Josephina write a statement on a piece of paper detailing how she had assisted in electrocuting Deborah. He made her sign it, and then he told her that if she ever went to the cops, they would be able to use the statement as evidence against her. And after that, Gary believed that Josephina was fully under his control. He also let her out of her shackles and allowed her to go upstairs and change clothes. And at that point, she was also allowed to go on outings with him, and she was no longer, I think, she was no longer, like, kept in the basement. She was, like, sleeping in his bed with him. She was, like, kind of playing the part of, like, the wife.
Doing what you gotta do.
Yeah. And he told her at one point that if he was ever caught, he would feign insanity and that he knew how to manipulate the system. Which is true, because as we can see by my invisible pile of tiny red flags that I've been throwing,
He's been very successful at that so far.
So, on March 22nd, Gary took Josephina with him to dump Deborah's body, which he had been storing in the chest freezer, in a wooded area in New Jersey, and then he told her that he wanted her help to find a replacement. And Josephina was like, I will help you if you let me visit my family, but just for like a little bit, and I promise I will bring you back a new wife. Like, you can trust me. I promise I'll, like, just let me visit with them for a little bit. I'll come back with a new wife for you, and then I'll help you find another one. So, like, you'll get 2 wives out of the deal. And Gary was like, okay. So, the following day, on March 23rd, Josephina rode with Gary while he looked for another victim. They came across Agnes Adams, who was 24. She was actually a sex worker that Josephina had worked with and someone that Gary had been a customer of. They brought her home. Gary had sex with her and then took her to the basement. And then the following day was the day that Josephina got to visit her family. So the plan was Gary would drop her off and then wait at a gas station, and Josephina was going to meet him there at midnight with a new wife for him.
That's an excellent plan. I bet she's going to fully go through with it.
So he drops her off, and she, like, immediately runs to her apartment and tells her boyfriend, Vincent Nelson, everything that happened.
How long has she been gone at this point? Like 2 months? 3 months?
So she disappeared end of November, and it is now March, end of March.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. When she left, she had just gotten into a fight with her boyfriend.
Oh, so yeah.
And so, like,
I mean, even if he was worried about her, she's a sex worker.
Yeah.
The police aren't going to go look for her.
Yeah. And so she, like, shows up, and she's, like, telling him this story that sounds made up, probably.
It's very far-fetched.
Yeah. And Vincent's first reaction is like, okay, where's this guy? I'm going to go confront him. And she's like, no. She's like, I need you to call the police. And so she gets Vincent to call the police. The police come to their apartment. She tells them their story, and they're like, this doesn't sound real. And then, thankfully, Josephina is like, let me show you my ankles where I have these, like, scars from where I've been shackled for months. And they're like, oh, okay, I guess we'll go to this gas station where you say this guy is waiting. Oh my gosh. So 2 police officers, John Cannon and David Savage, go to the gas station at midnight and approach Gary, who's waiting for Josephina in his Cadillac. And when he sees them, he tries to play dumb, and he's like, oh, is this about some missed child support payments? And they're like, no. You are under arrest for something else. And a few hours later, in the early morning hours of March 25th, 1987, Police broke down the door to Gary Heidnik's house and went to the basement. You can look at your last picture now. Where they found Lisa Thomas, Jacqueline Askins, and Agnes Adams all alive. Human remains were found in Gary's kitchen, including a forearm in the refrigerator, and the front and backyards were excavated over the next few days, but no other remains were found. And Deborah's body was recovered back where it was dumped. Gary first appeared in court on April 23rd before going to trial, I think, a year later. His lawyer, Chuck Peruto, tried to argue that the women were already in the basement when Gary moved in.
Wow. That's one hell of a legal defense. Wow.
It's probably my favorite defense ever.
That's brilliant. That is some $9.
And then he also tried to argue not guilty by reason of insanity. And I think that he played up Gary's, like, quirks.
His history.
A little bit. So I think, like, if you look at pictures of him, they, like, put him back in his leather jacket that has, like, all the fringe, and they, like, just make him look a little, like, crazy.
Yeah, unhinged.
Yeah. But all the women testified. Like, all of his victims testified. Plus, there was, like, an overwhelming amount of evidence. Like, including a dismembered human body. And then Gary's astute investing was used by defense as evidence that he was not insane and was actually very intelligent. The defense was like, no, he's not crazy. He's, like, an incredibly intelligent man that made, like, $4 million. Like,
you can be both.
I mean, you can be both, but you can't be not guilty by reason of insanity. Yeah. And, yeah, sorry. You can't not know that cutting up and eating a woman is bad. Yeah. On June 30th of 1988, the jury found Gary guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder, 5 counts of rape, 6 counts of kidnapping, 4 counts of aggravated assault, and 1 count of...
And a partridge in a pear tree.
Yes. 1 count of involuntary deviant sexual intercourse. And the following day, he was sentenced to death by lethal injection. There was this whole big long article about how one of his daughters tried to, keep him from getting executed.
Stay the execution.
And I think it was because she just found out that he was her father and she'd been in foster care her whole life. And she was trying to argue that, like, he didn't, basically, he wasn't mentally fit. And it did not work. Yeah. So he was executed on July 6th of 1999. Sandra and Deborah's families were present, as was Agnes. So I did try to find what the rest of the survivors were up to. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of hard to track them all down.
I imagine so.
I know that they all took some legal action to try to gain access to the funds in the Merrill Lynch account. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they were successful. I know Josephina wrote a book in 2014 called The Cellar Girl, which is about her experience. I mentioned they all, except for Josephina, have some degree of hearing loss from those injuries. And I think all of them have done some interviews at different points in time, which you can look at in the show notes. But that's the story of Gary Heidnik. And do you have a guess for who he inspired in the movies?
Well, I keep thinking of it puts the lotion on the skin with the hole. Is it him?
Yeah. Buffalo Bill.
Buffalo Bill.
Yeah,
that's what I thought. All right.
Yeah, he was one of the inspirations for Buffalo Bill, which I would say...
I was just trying to remember timeline of when that came out versus this.
I don't know. Well, because technically Eddie Gein was also...
Yeah, because
of the body suit, or the woman's suit.
Yeah.
But I would say, again, Eddie Gein's not a monster. I'm going to die on that hill. But...
He was a made monster.
He was. Ugh. Who knew that I was going to become such an Eddie Gein sympathizer? I know.
Wackadoodle you are.
I know. But very much Gary Heidnik. He can go.
He can take his one crazy eye and go straight to hell.
Although technically, he's not technically considered a serial killer. Because
it's only 2.
It's only the 2. Yep. Which is something I learned. Although, you know what? I gotta check my research. Because according to that book, I think they might have changed the rules a little bit. I don't know. Anyway.
If you want to see pictures from this week's episode and other goodies, you can check out our Facebook and Instagram at The Tales We Tell Podcast. If you want to see photos but don't do the social media thing, all of our photos are also on our website, thetaleswetellpodcast.com. If you want to support us, get yourself some sweet, sweet swag while we work on our own little online store, you can go to redbubble.com, search The Tales We Tell. And if you want to become patrons to support us and get yourself, some commercial-free listening, early access, bonus content, stickers, love notes, and just our undying love and affection, go to patreon.com, search The Tales We Tell.
Yay!
And have a great new year now that we've started over for you. Yep. And I guess if we need to restart the new year again, let us know. So good luck, everyone.
Good vibes for what?
I'm gonna go home and go to bed now.
You do that. I'm gonna have another glass of the wine and eat some more of the pretzels.
You do that.
I do that. You have
I go bed,
baby. Okay. See you guys next week.
Bye. Bye.